Trust and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, both of whom helped us promote this event and get the word out to you, and were our partners in pulling this together. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Matt LeRoux, who's going to be our speaker today. He was formerly with Cornell Cooperative Extension, and he's got a slide that's going to introduce himself, so I will end it there. I see some folks using the chat box, so that's great, and we're going to go ahead and let's see if the poll worked. Can anybody else see the results there?
Yep, I can see them.
All right, cool. All right, Matt, it's all yours.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm going to switch right over to my slides, and I will introduce myself. Did that work? Okay. Yeah, so we're going to cover profitable meat marketing. Thanks for joining us on an afternoon. I know the sun, for the first time, just came out today where I am in Ithaca, New York. And I know it's tough to get out in the afternoon when you're farming. So I appreciate you coming here and talking with us. Just to give you some of my background, I got a master's degree in ag economics, really with a focus on food marketing from Cornell about 10 years ago. I'm working with a regional beef brand up here in New York. So it's just a branded beef program where we sell cuts and primals to restaurants and grocery stores. Prior to that work, I did work for Cornell Cooperative Extension for 11 years as a county-based agent, and developed some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today, like the meat pricing tool and the meat suite, which is being used in New York and North Carolina now. And I just wanted to say, before all of that, my introduction to agriculture and livestock was with two New England-based groups, the Livestock Alliance and the Heritage Breeds Conservancy. And for them, I did ultrasound beef cattle for carcass quality. So that gave me a lot of time on farms, because we bought from farms from Maryland to Maine and out into Pennsylvania, and we had to ultrasound each animal before we would make it. So that's just some of my years of background and kind of why I like to talk on this topic. And next, I'm just going to share, my definition for marketing is that it's a process. It's tricky because, production work has a beginning and an end, and marketing doesn't. It's an ongoing process of understanding what the consumer would like, developing and creating that product for them, and then getting it to them. And the first section of what we're going to discuss today is about creating a marketing plan to sort of execute this understanding of the consumer, getting that product to them, and designing that product to suit their needs. So I really advocate for a simple 4-piece marketing plan. And if you're not the type that likes to, maybe sit down in front of a computer and write this, it's still worth it to maybe write a 1 or 2 page plan. And the idea is that the plan guides your decisions and gives you some focus with your marketing. So you're not just reacting, but you're working off a plan. And ultimately, a plan will actually make your marketing effort, the time and the money that you spend on it, more efficient, right? It'll pay off better because you have a focused plan. So I'm going to walk through the sections of a plan and basically the guts of a plan and how to create it. So we're going to start off with market strategy. Strategy development is really about choosing a target customer and really investigating them and sort of sketching a caricature of that customer so that you can serve them better. So when we think about any given target customer, we want to start thinking about the choices that they're presented with when they do food shopping, in our case. So we think about, this shopper, this woman with a baby on her hip. She gets in her car and she's going to go somewhere to buy food. And if she makes the choice to go to the farmer's market instead of the grocery store, then our job as marketers is to think about, well, why would she choose the farmer's market over the store? What would be the traits of the farmer's market that would cause her to choose it? And I wish that I was there in person with you all. That's what Carolyn and I had originally planned, was to get together in person. We planned it months before COVID happened, so I would be asking you to chime in. But people start to bring up things like, oh, well, the farmers market has fresh groceries, or the perception that the quality of the food is better. They might bring up supporting the local economy, and people often point out that the farmers market is really kind of a social opportunity for people to get out and see other folks in their town, bump into somebody at the farmers market, hear from the farmers, and so on. So when we ask why would she do that, we might say that she perceives that the quality of the food is better. She wants to support the local economy, the local farms, and she's hoping to run into some friends while she's there. Then we think about that shopper at the market, and I'm thinking, when I sort of envision this, of the Ithaca Farmers Market, where we have on a good Saturday we have 95 vendors. So envision booths or tents just lining in a long line on both sides. And if she was a new shopper, think about, why would she choose your booth over someone else's, right? So we think about, again, this why, because every answer that we can deduce is going to help us, in essence, play it back to the customer, or to cater to that interest. So we might think, well, she might come to our booth because we have an abundant display. It's easy to think about vegetables that way. It's more challenging with meat, but an abundant display, nice piles of fresh looking produce. It might be that we have very clear signage stating our prices and our products. It might be that we're making eye contact and we're smiling, right? That might be a reason to come to our booth. And actually, it might be because we have a long line. I know vendors get nervous about lines, but if you think about seeing two vendors side by side with the same products, and one has a long line and one has no line, think of the conclusion that you'll draw. What's wrong with the people that have no line? So maybe she's going to come because everybody else seems to be going there. So we go through this why question, and it's really to get us to start understanding this customer, and we pick our target customer to do that investigation with. So as we flesh out the traits of the customer, we're going to think about 4 really important characteristics: the needs, which are very basic; the motivations behind their purchasing; desires, I couldn't think of a better word. I've used this word desires. That's anything extra that we can offer, maybe the icing on the cake, something that would really please or thrill this customer. And then, simply put, their buying habits, the way that they shop. It's very practical, but it's important to understand. So when we think about a customer and their needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits, we might envision how the customer would speak. So we could say, okay, she comes to the market and she says, well, I just have a basic need, right? I need groceries. In this case, I'm going to say I need carrots. Of course, this is kind of easy to figure out, that people need to get food. But then we have the motivation. So when I buy carrots, I want to support local farms and I want to avoid pesticides. So now we're thinking a little further into this customer. Desires, anything extra that we can offer. So maybe this customer is going to say, I want red cord chantenay, which is a variety of carrot, for my dinner party. Why? Because we're going to give this customer carrots that support local farms, that don't have any sprays on them, and that they can impress their friends with, right? They can name drop this beautiful name, red cord chantenay. So we're just giving them a little something extra that we think suits their interests. And then we have the buying habits. So I don't have time to stop at the farmer's market for just one thing. So this is our target customer. Then we're going to get our red cord chantenays into the local grocery store, co-op store. Maybe we're going to put up a roadside stand that they can swing by on their way home from work, and just try to find out where they do their shopping, what their buying habits are, so that we can cater to them. So I'm going to suggest 4 basic groups of consumers that buy local meat, and then think about how you would maybe pick one of these as your target customer and try to get more specific. I do want to add, when I was planning out my slides for today, I was debating about putting in this fifth new customer, which is the COVID type customer, or what I'm calling the crisis customer. I didn't include them primarily because I think that for sustainability and sort of longevity with your marketing, you're going to want to focus on a type of consumer from before the pandemic, and in order to sort of retain customers after the pandemic, or as the conditions of the pandemic sort of subside. So I'm going to really focus on traditional groups of people that might buy local meat, and just know in the back of your mind that, yeah, there is an opportunity right now to market to consumers with these during these unique times and these unique conditions. I'm not going to draw too much special attention to that. So I've identified four main groups of local meat buyers, really by their motivations that cause them to purchase and seek out local meat. First group would be the foodie or the locavore, and these are really food enthusiasts, and they're making these purchases, we can say, as being experience driven. So these are folks who would like to try as many things as possible, try foods from, in fact, all over the world, but then the more local food enthusiast types really want to try from as many local farms as possible. These are folks who want to try unusual cuts that they've never tried before, try new recipes. Part of the experience is shopping. So certainly these folks want to shop at farmers markets and talk to the producer, hear your story, hear the challenges on the farm, hear something about the breed. Again, take a recommendation for an unusual cut or something they haven't tried before. This is the experience-driven or foodie consumer. Then we have the cause-driven consumer. So put it in green font for a reason. It's sort of the green consumer who's got a social cause that they want to support when they make purchases, whether that's care for the land or the local economy, whether it's a certain production system or humane livestock handling, or even the cause that they're supporting could be their own personal health. If they perceive that a locally raised meat or meat from any given production system is the healthiest thing for them to consume, then that's the cause that they're supporting when they make this purchase. So you can see how this is a little different from the first group. This is cause-driven purchasers. Then we have what I'm going to call traditional buyers, and they're really more price-oriented, or we could say value-driven consumers. These are definitely the folks who, first of all, have been buying local meat for a long, long time, and really they are your people who buy quarters and halves and whole animals, right? And I always like to joke that, in the 70s, my folks lived in a rural area, and they bought local meat, and it wasn't distinguished as local, right? It was just meat, but they would buy a side of beef from a local farm because I knew that was an economic choice compared to buying it by the individual pieces at the grocery store. So traditional buyers, very loyal buyers, again, buy a quarter. Let's just go with a quarter of a beef example. They buy one, they're happy with it. It feeds their family for a year. They're going to come back to your farm, right, and buy again. You can sort of contrast the traditional buyer in terms of loyalty with the foodie, right? The foodie, always seeking new experiences, wants to try everything. So you sell these folks a really great piece of meat, and they brag about it to their friends, and they post a picture of it on Instagram, right? But they're not necessarily coming back to you, where it might be a while before they come back, because they want to try everything. So they want to go and buy from the other livestock producers in your area. Traditional buyers, different story, coming for price, value, getting something that they're happy with, and then returning year after year, which is a great thing. And we have the ethnic and religious buyers. So I'm going to say that they're culturally driven. These are folks that are maintaining cultural traditions, traditional recipes, or even observing certain religious restrictions, such as needing kosher or halal slaughter, seeking out, again, particular cuts of meat, maybe that they can't find in grocery stores or that some of your other customers aren't buying. Even seeking out when it comes to lamb and goat, animals during certain holiday times of the year. And really, if you think about it, if you're a person who buys a turkey at Thanksgiving, that's a cultural buy, right? In that moment, at least, you're a culturally driven consumer, because why are you eating turkey on that date? I'm preserving this cultural tradition. So we can relate to that and think about this as a very viable group, especially if you're in urban areas with concentrations of folks from different countries and so different cultures. Then there's an opportunity to market there. And they do seek out local meat because they cannot find the quality and the unique cuts that they're looking for in ordinary grocery stores. Now I'm going to talk a lot today about selling direct to consumer, and these four groups certainly fit that profile of the farm selling directly to consumers for household consumption. But I want to say that as we talk through this idea of a marketing plan and a marketing strategy, it really applies to other buyers that you might have. So I'm going to suggest that there are other kinds of folks that buy livestock. And if you really primarily sell feeders, like feeder cattle or feeder pigs or feeder lambs, or if you normally sell breeding stock or even animals to hobby farmers or as sort of backyard pets, the same principles of understanding your consumer apply to these other groups, even though I'm not probably going to discuss them after this slide. Think about that feeder buyer at the sale barn. They're looking for certain traits, and they will pay better prices, right, when they see the animals that fit their desires. So you can think about the auction buyer as your target consumer and create your product, which is your feeder animal, to better suit them, and in return receive a better price. So the same thing applies in other applications besides direct-to-consumer meat sales. So let's talk about how to develop a strategy for your farm. Why would you need a strategy? It really focuses the identity of your farm and of your brand, focuses the message that you have to get out about your products. It will make your marketing labor more effective. And I mean this very literally. I mentioned in my introduction slide that I was trained as an ag economist, and I'm always thinking about efficiency. And in essence, what I'm thinking is, how many dollars in sales can you generate for each hour or dollar that you spend on marketing? So that's a measurable rate. And when I say to make your marketing labor more effective, I mean it quite literally, that you can increase the amount of sales for the time that you spend and the effort that you make on marketing. And that's my goal, is to help you improve that. Marketing strategy will differentiate you from other farms selling in the same space, and even other competing brands that aren't local, and also do what we call positioning, which is help really clarify your place in the market. It will actually attract your customers. As you do effective communication based on your strategy, that message will resonate, and you'll begin to attract your target customers. And in a very sincere way, it allows you to serve those customers better. And our marketing game as small farms and direct-to-consumer folks is not the same as Coca-Cola and Apple and Walmart. We're really coming with a sense of sincerity. I'm sure that you would like to serve your customers well, and in order to do that and to improve your service, it takes some time to understand that. And finally, when it comes to marketing strategy, it's just this question of, what will the future bring? There are changes in the market. Certainly, pandemic was a change in the market that no one was anticipating. And I've seen other changes, competitors move in, or you expand your production, you have more product to sell, right? So the market's always changing, and having a strategy in place is a better means to get through changes in the market than to sort of be reactionary. So it's nice to get that position defined and work on a strategy as you encounter those new situations in the market. The way that we work on strategy, the way that I like to work on is really fun. Like I say, I wish we were all in the same room for this one, because it's fun to do. But it's called a strategy sentence, and I learned this in a class that I took at Cornell. And that class was really training up students to go work for, you know, the big people like Coca-Cola, Walmart that I just mentioned, and Kraft and so on, right? So they use the same technique, but I saw it as something really relevant for small farms to use. So the way we work with a strategy sentence is you write this sentence and you replace the words that I have in red with your own words. And the key here is to be really specific. So what you're trying to do with your strategy sentence is draw a caricature of your target customer. And if you think about a caricature drawing, it's very exaggerated, right? And it's funny, actually, it's funny. And the caricature artist uses these, you know, exaggerating your features. It's still recognizable as you. Well, so this sentence is going to be the same idea. So we're going to draw a really funny, exaggerated image of our customer in order to understand them better. And I'll show you what we mean with an example. So I have this example of this product, Kraft macaroni and cheese. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And you know, if we were in person, I'd say, all right, let's write a sentence together for this product. So it's not our farm raises, right? It's our company makes, whatever. Our company makes, and then what do we make? People will often tell me macaroni and cheese. So we could put that under claims and products, or they want to say the cheesiest macaroni and cheese. And then we start to talk about, okay, well, who's our target customer? Who do we make this for? And they want to say we make it for kids, right? Because like, so then I push people to think a little bit more. Who do we really make this product for? Kids might be asking for it, but they're not purchasing it and they're not preparing it. So if we really think about it, who we're making it for is the parents, right? And why do I'm wondering if the chat box is.
Yep, we have one in the chat box. We make it for
Good.
parents who are overwhelmed.
For parents who are overwhelmed? Yes, perfect. Right. So it's thank you for saying that. It's for, you know, busy working parents who've got a busy schedule. Their kids have, you know, practice for this, that, and the other thing after school, and they're getting home, you know, late, and they got to do their homework, and they got to go to bed. And, you know, is this well, I'm going to reduce it to moms. I'm going to back that up with research that says 80% of the groceries in the United States are purchased by women. So I'm going to use that piece of market research and say, yeah, busy working moms who are, what was the phrase you used?
See, the one in the chat box was for
Yeah.
Parents who are overwhelmed, but we also have another one for kids who can make it themselves instead of asking their parents to make it.
I like that one too, but I'm going to go with the busy working parents. So, you know, busy working moms. And so think about now, instead of saying that we make macaroni and cheese, what do we provide the busy working parent with? It's dinner, right? We give them dinner. So we can even forget about the literal macaroni and the literal cheese, but we give them a dinner that's fast, easy, and inexpensive. So I guess I would think I have this on here. Yeah. So here's my version that I made. I've done this in you know, with real live people before. We make fast, easy meals for busy working moms who have run out of time and give up today, right? Today, this day when all the practice stuff after school perfectly aligns, when we only walk in the door at 6:30, we're not going to get those carrots from the farmer's market out and that chuck roast, right? And start braising and start chopping it. It's for today, forget it. We're going to eat this stuff. So think about how this sentence is funny, and it draws a caricature of this customer, right? We could picture this, you know, these people getting home and they're just like disheveled and they're exhausted. Now, but the sentence also does a lot of informing for marketing decisions. So think of this: if we only had enough budget to place an ad in one magazine, I know I'm not talking about online, but we only had the budget to place an ad in one magazine, where would we reach this target customer? Right, so it's busy working moms or busy working parents. There's a magazine called Parenting Magazine, right? So that would be a better placement of our ad than in something more general. So even the USA Today newspaper that's printed and read nationally, instinctively you might think, but USA Today reaches everybody, right? Sure, but that's not efficient marketing. So we're going to look at our target customer and think about where's the best place to reach this target customer. We'll go with Parenting Magazine. Then we're going to think about why do they value our product? What do we offer? So our ad in that magazine is going to play back what we know about them. So maybe the ad says, dinner is ready in 3 minutes, right? Something to that effect. Dinner is ready in a few minutes, because we know they want fast, easy dinners. If we want to improve our product to better serve our customer, we could think about this. They value it because it's fast and easy. But as the one that I've pictured here for you, that I used to eat when I was a kid, you can see the instruction panel on the side there. You have to boil water, and you have to measure butter and measure milk. And if your kids are whining and you're exhausted, it's going to take about an hour and a half for that water to boil, right? It's not that fast. And then it's easy, but I still have to do this measuring and this cleanup. So they did improve the product based on their understanding of the target customer, and they came out with those microwave versions, right? Where I think you just put water in the cup and microwave it. So see how a strategy sentence tells you where to reach consumers, what message to use, and even how to understand the way that they're using your product so that you can improve it to suit them better. And that's the value of a strategy sentence. I hope that illustration was fun and helpful to you. So here's some reality check. Your strategy sentence is not for your brochure or your Facebook page. You don't share the sentence that you just wrote with folks. It's not for the public, it's for you. It's a sentence that you really need to revisit in your mind whenever you make a marketing decision. And I don't want you to miss opportunities, even when it comes to purchasing the bags that your customers will carry the product away in. You would revisit this sentence. Let's think about the farmer's market shopper again. We know they're going to carry their product away from the market. So we have some options. We could buy those white plastic bags that say thank you in red letters on them. But if we think that they're coming to us because they support local agriculture, maybe they're concerned about some environmental issues, maybe we look at getting nice brown paper bags, right? So we're going to understand that customer, and when we're faced with a marketing decision, we're going to use our strategy sentence to guide that decision in order to overall enhance all of our marketing effort. That sentence is not for your brochure, not for the public to see. In fact, if you work on a strategy sentence, and I hope you will, and it reads really nice and pretty and you think you should put it on Facebook, that means you need to improve your sentence. So spend some time making it something that you wouldn't show to anyone. The outward appearance of your marketing will not seem unusual to ordinary customers. So you're not going to alienate non-target customers with your marketing when you're using a sentence to design what you work on. Again, we're starting off with an exaggerated point, but your appearance to the public won't alienate non-target customers and won't make your marketing look unusual. That's a concern that people sometimes have, but really strategy is what will help you serve them, identify them, and carve out your spot in the market. Oh yeah, if you don't have a marketing strategy sentence, then your default sentence is we sell whatever we have to anyone who will buy it. And I'm sure you could see how that is not very efficient for our efforts. So yeah, I do hope that you'll work a bit on a strategy sentence. So think about this, brainstorming, how would busy working moms on a budget, sort of those Kraft mac and cheese customers, how would they like to buy sausage? And what kind of sausage? So maybe using the same sentence, we could think about the implications for the products that we offer for sale. Would they want to buy fresh or frozen? If they're busy working, they're on the go, they might rather buy fresh sausage than frozen, where they have to plan ahead and thaw it out. If they're feeding young kids, they probably don't want really spicy varieties. They might like more bland, like sweet Italian and even breakfast sausage. They might like to buy bulk quantities with home delivery. Other great ideas that folks have had when I've done this in person is they might like to buy preformed patties and links instead of bulk, right? Getting a frozen 2-pound bulk bag versus buying fresh patties or links, right? Obviously that you can see the implications for targeting this customer and then developing your product and selling it to them. So that was just another illustration of how strategy works. And this is what I was referring to. You have a measurable rate of efficiency for your efforts. And as an economist, I believe that you can improve anything that you measure. In essence, what we're measuring is your gross sales that you generate for each hour and dollar that you spend on marketing. So you can improve this through planning. And I hop ahead here because I think I've gone a little long on that section. Summary about marketing strategy. The less that you like marketing, the more you need a strategy. Again, this is about hours and effort spent. So really, I could imagine folks feeling like sitting down at the kitchen table and working on a marketing plan sounds like torture. I can completely relate, I understand. But the less that you actually like to do marketing or think about it, the more you should do it, right? Because this can reduce the total amount of time. Assess the, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think your headphones might have just cut out, but now
Oh,
you're back again. So
okay. Super loud noise went by my house, so that might have been it.
that was it.
Another summary point would be to identify a real exaggerated and specific target market. Again, you're going to focus all your efforts on serving just this group, but don't worry about alienating others. It'll actually draw them in. And you can think of a lot of illustrations probably out there in the real world. And then focus your marketing and ultimately your production activities to serve these customers and their traits, like their needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits. I'm going to move on to market research, and I think we can all relate to this sense. You know, I've been in the room with producer groups many a time, and they'll say something to the effect of, you know, we need to educate the consumer about the value of, and then, you know, fill in the blank, whatever they're producing, whether they're going to say, you know, beef raised in our state or pork raised on pasture, or whatever it may be. The idea that, you know, we really need to educate the consumer about the value of what we do, in essence. And this introduces this section on market research. And I'm already smirking because, yeah, I knew we'd be on a webinar and I wanted to entertain you and keep you awake. So think about this. Imagine that you're driving on a long drive. You're uncomfortable, you're tired, and you need a good night's sleep because whatever you're driving to, it's somebody's wedding or a big meeting, right? It's the next day. And after driving all day, you just really want a good night's sleep, a comfortable bed, so that you're refreshed for the next day. Right? So you're driving along, it's late at night, you're exhausted, and then you see that sign, right? There's a hotel ahead, so we're gonna be able to get some sleep. And you check in, and the room is clean and perfectly acceptable. There's no problem there. And you lay in bed and you turn off the lights and really looking forward to a good night's sleep. And as you lay there, you realize that you're aching. This mattress is as hard as a rock. It's like laying on a sheet of plywood. And so this is you laying there and you're like, oh, this bed is so uncomfortable. Right, so you go down to the front office. This is a mom and pop hotel, by the way, and the owner is behind the counter, and you approach and you say, hey, you know, the room's great, but man, that mattress is really hard. And the owner is excited, and they hand you a brochure, and it says, I'm so glad you came down here. Did you know that very hard mattresses are scientifically proven to be better for you? Hard mattresses align your spine for better health. And did you know that people who sleep on very hard mattresses live an average of 5 years longer, and they earn more money at their jobs? All proven with science, right? They have lower cholesterol, more energy, and fewer children. Right? So they're just such advocates for this hard mattress, right? this is so exciting that you came down and you got to learn all this from them. But ultimately, what would you choose? Would you go back to sleeping on what feels like a sheet of plywood? Or what if across the street for just another $20 a night was this really cushy looking comfortable bed? All right, so I took you through this anecdote because I want to get across a concept. Understanding consumers is better. It's actually far more efficient than educating consumers, right? In my little story, you just want a comfortable night of sleep. And when you went to the owner of the hotel, they tried to educate you back into sleeping on this uncomfortable mattress. You still don't want it, even though you've been taught, right? So as marketers, we're far better off understanding the consumer than trying to convince or educate them. Market research is the process of understanding the consumer, and I'm just coming back to my original definition from earlier on, understanding what the consumer wants, developing the product, and getting it to them. It's not about consumer education when we're marketers. So I'm going to introduce two basic types of marketing. One is called production-driven. The other is called market-driven. And in short, we call them push or pull. In one scenario, you're pushing your products out onto the consumer. And in the other scenario, the consumer is sort of pulling your product into the marketplace. So production-driven marketing or push marketing is this idea that we make this stuff, we believe it's good, and we think you should buy it, right? So it's this idea of pushing it onto the consumer. We go where there's people and we try to sell to them. So we're going to go to the farmer's market and we're going to try to push our product out onto people, convince them that it's great. This method is expensive and time consuming. It's not efficient. It's going to take a lot of your time and your money to convince people. And your marketing objective here is to persuade and to convince people to get them to try what you have and ultimately to buy it. On the flip side, we have what we call pull marketing or market driven. This is a different scenario where the consumer is sort of, you can think about the consumer daydreaming, I wish there was this product. I wish I could get this thing. People want this stuff, they will buy it. And now look what we do. And instead of going where there are people and trying to sell, we go where our target customers are in order to serve the product to them because we know that they want it. It's much more efficient, it's lower cost marketing. And your objective really becomes just to let people know we're here and we have that stuff. We have the stuff. We know you want this stuff. We have it. And there's some great examples out there. Think of traditional products like Tide fabric laundry detergent, right? They're always coming out with a new version of Tide. Every 6 months, it seems like there's a new version. And what do? They push that product out on the consumer. They have their advertising, but they'll send out coupons, right? They'll hang a plastic pouch of the new kind on the neck of the current kind so that when you buy it, you're getting that free sample attached. Or if anyone's as old as I am and older, you might remember that Tide will literally mail the product to your house. If you've ever gotten a pouch of laundry detergent in the mail, right, that's push marketing. So it's very expensive to push this product out because folks aren't really asking for a new version of Tide. On the flip side, we have something like the Winter Farmers Market. Up here in Ithaca, I moved to Ithaca in 2007, and we didn't have winter farmers markets yet, but there is a lot of demand for local food in this town. And I was in groups of my peers at parties and stuff. People were literally standing around saying, "I wish there was a place to buy local food in the winter." So they were pulling the Winter Farmers Market as a product into existence and into the market. We could think of lots of other examples. The last one I'll mention because it's fun. When Apple comes out with the newest version of the iPhone, it's quite different than the new version of Tide, right? People will sleep on the sidewalk outside the Apple store in order to buy the new iPhone. Apple doesn't have to offer discounts or samples. Their objective is really letting you know that they have the product, and come and get it. So you can think about push and pull, and your job as a marketer is to use market research to market the products to people who already value them. Instead of trying to convince folks of the value of what we have, we're going to find the people who value it and try to sell to them. This makes the farmers market a great place, and I know I've mentioned farmers market examples quite a bit. People who go to farmers markets are seeking local food, right? So that's just one way that we're already going where these people are who value what we have. It's much more efficient than push marketing. So what about what I produce now? You're already producing something. You might be thinking, well, what do I do? You do your market research, you work on your target customer, and you find out who are these people who currently want what you produce. Chances are that you can find them. Identify where they are, literally, geography-wise. Where are these people? How many of them are there? And how can you best reach them? What message and descriptions will you be able to use with your product to resonate and reach these consumers? Work with your market research to find the people who already value what you're producing. If need be, you could consider adapting your production to meet consumer demand when it's reasonable and profitable. Give you a simple example. I talked about the 2-pound frozen bag of bulk sausage earlier. If you found that your customers who were seeking your product were all seniors who only lived, 1 or 2 people per house, then you might change that product into 1-pound packages, right? So that's just an example of adapting your production to meet consumer demand. I worked with a farm in Western New York who's selling all of their beef as quarters and sides directly to consumers. So I was talking to them, and they said they had quite a following. They've been selling a lot of quarters and sides. And then the producer remarked that, the biggest challenge is that people have to write such a big check when they pay for their full quarter or half. As we went on to talk, he told me that his animals were hanging carcass weights well above 900 pounds, sometimes breaking 1,000. These are huge animals. Now, if you're selling quarters and halves to folks who struggle to write a big check, think about an opportunity to change your production. Start bringing frames down, bringing carcass weights down, and making those quarters and sides smaller, right? So that's adapting production to meet the target consumer. That's an example of market research, right? Just understanding folks and changing production to suit and accommodate that customer. All right, so summary about market research: develop that target customer to focus on. Again, I'm going to repeat, needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits. Look at the folks who value what you produce, and then use market research to keep your product in the market space. So markets change, trends come and go and sort of wash over the market for a period, and you're going to have to maintain this process of understanding consumers to stay in a market-driven space. Also want to say, educating the consumer, I sort of said we don't want to educate the consumer. Educating the consumer is okay when it comes to helping them with recipes, introducing them to new cuts, and so on, right? Because you're not trying there to create a desire for your product in that instance. They already want this product. You're just helping them with their purchase by showing them a new cut or teaching them a recipe. So I'm not saying that we never educate the consumer, but just think about, are we trying to convince or are we accommodating and serving? Last section of the marketing plan that I'm going to talk about before we take a break is the marketing objectives. So these are just really helpful, just like marketing planning, just like a strategy sentence. Objectives pay off when they're specific and measurable. They focus your effort. If you feel that marketing is, just a huge gray cloud in front of you and you don't know where to begin, writing some objectives will focus you down and make all of your effort pay off better. So I'm going to introduce objectives like this. I'm just going to say, here's an objective of mine, right? I should put money in savings. Well, this is a good idea. I'm probably not going to do it. I'm probably not going to succeed. And how will I know if I did? Because this objective is not specific or measurable. I guess it's measurable. I can see how much money. Here's another objective. I will put money in savings every month. So I would argue that the task of saving money is slightly easier with this second statement because now I know I need to put money in savings once each month. But look at this next one. I'll put $50 from my first paycheck in savings every month beginning in September. So if I write an objective like this, I know we're not talking about marketing, but it becomes easier to save money and it's more probable that I'll succeed. Also, as I move through the month of September, I can check my progress, right? I've put $20 in so far in September. Before the month ends, I'd like to come up with another $30. So writing specific and measurable objectives make the task easier to do and make the marketing task easier to do than if we just say, we'd like to sell more beef this summer. That's a very challenging objective and it's hard to know where to begin. The other thing I'll say about this third version here about savings is, it's okay to set out on an objective and measure your progress and then realize that you need to reevaluate. So we might say, look, realistically, this isn't going to work and we can only put 30 in. And so we can adjust this objective as we work through it. So the way that we can apply this to marketing, I want to say that marketing objectives are not always just sales based. So just setting out in the month of October, I want to contact 4 restaurants about buying my pork. That would be a good objective and take more, focus our energy so that we have a better chance of getting restaurant sales by just setting out this plan. I'm going to contact 4 in a month. At the end of the month, if you've called 4 places, you've made a start, and it's going to take a lot of phone calls before we get a sale. Objectives make sense with a production schedule and a marketing budget. So when I'm writing objectives for a farm that I work with, I'm going to look at the production schedule, meaning what months are we going to be harvesting animals and how many are we going to harvest? So we're going to start to create objectives centered around our product inventory, if you will. If we're going to harvest 4 lambs a month for 4 months from October to January, then we're going to build marketing objectives around marketing those lambs. And we're also going to set a marketing budget. I've used as a rule of thumb 10% of sales, but you can set your own budget. The way to think about your marketing budget is really, how much would I be willing to spend to make this much money? Or in the 4 lambs a month example, how much would I be willing to spend to know that I could get all 4 lambs sold? That becomes my marketing budget. Key ingredients for developing a good objective is to identify the audience, which is probably your target audience, to set out the goal, to have a timeline, which is a start date and an end date, and to give yourself a budget, and then you can innovate some really hopefully exciting and interesting action or communication out to the consumer. So I'll give you an example. We want to profitably market 12 head of beef this year. So I'm going to start writing my objective. I want to get 48 beef quarters sold in the fall. My audience or my target customer are rural families with young children who don't know about my farm. I'm going to give myself a budget of $50 a week for 15 weeks. Those 15 weeks are from September 1st till December 20th. And I guess I'm thinking, I want to sit down at the holidays and know that I've got all my beef marketed and I can kick back for a little while before the next crop is ready. I can spend that $750 weekly, or I can spend it, per month or in one shot if I want. So I'm going to write this objective, and then I'm going to sit down at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee and my marketing team. A marketing team might be my spouse and my children, but we're going to talk about what's the best way to reach rural families with young children who don't know about us, about these quarters of beef that we have for sale. And, you can think of lots of great ideas, hosting an event at the farm, getting people out to see the farm, see the cattle. How are we going to reach these families? We could drop off flyers at schools, daycares, put posters up at churches and community centers. We're going to think about where young families with young children congregate, what would interest them, and design our action through a brainstorming process. So the best version that I've heard, because I've done this with groups in person, is the idea of having an open house farm day, using some of that money to pay for your own product and having free burgers for families that show up, and then having a raffle for a Weber barbecue. In order to enter the raffle, you have to put down a deposit on a quarter, and distributing the word through schools. So those are some ideas that I've heard folks come up with. And that's what's fun in my mind. It's not just about trying to put an ad on Facebook or in print media. It's about brainstorming what would reach these people. What are they interested? What do they want to hear? And you can get as interesting as you want. You can have as much fun as you want with your actual action plan. So I'm going to summarize here, and we can stop for questions, but I'm just going to review the marketing plan as we discussed it, and then give you a to-do list so it's really tangible for you. Talk with your marketing team. Again, that's probably your spouse and your kids or business partner. Get a pot of coffee, sit down on a lousy weather day, and talk about your target customer and work on your strategy sentence. Take some time to understand the consumer. This can include looking around online, look at other brands that cater to your target customer and what their messaging is. You can look up statistics. Even, I like to look up census data about population and income in a certain region. Something else that's handy is to look at the Department of Transportation. The DOT in your county probably publishes car counts on the highway. So you can look at certain roads in town and look at where people are driving. Whatever research contributes to your understanding of people's shopping habits and their interests, needs, motivations, desires, and buying habits. And then to formulate some objectives and how we're going to sell what we want to sell, and not just sales objectives, but also how can we begin to reach these folks? Who do we want to reach? Where are we going to reach them? Write some objectives, come up with a budget, and then brainstorm for some really innovative and efficient ways to accomplish those objectives. So this is the way that you develop a plan and put it into action. And ultimately, like I said, the less you think you like marketing, the more you could benefit from some planning like this. So I'll pause there, and we can take questions.
All right, let's see. So I don't have any questions in the chat box right now, except that one person was touching on the issue of processing and how that's making kind of planning for marketing and just everything a little bit more challenging for next year because the processing facilities are just so overwhelmed.
Yeah, and that's true across the U.S. I'm working with groups on the West Coast and in Iowa and in the South and up here in the Northeast, and it's universally true right now. Because of the pandemic, we've had an extra high number of consumers seek out local meat, which has driven more animals to our local, smaller scale processors. One thing that I'll suggest in that situation is that in most states, there's greater custom exempt processing capacity than there is USDA inspected capacity. So at least that's true here in New York and some other states that I work in. So there's an opportunity to sell the meat that you can sell when it's custom and exempt processed. And here I'm referring to quarters, halves, and wholes. So there's still, I know those folks are getting busy too, but there are more of them, and they tend to be a little bit more flexible and easier to get into, or maybe get in sooner than with USDA inspected. So you could look at the channels that you can grow in.
Hey Matt, this is Rich Fauché down in Virginia. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been following something that my local representative about the Prime Act, because I want to get involved in especially European style charcuterie products. And, you know, I've got to do, that's why I'm watching your marketing program. I got to figure out how I can market it. But in that Prime bill that Congress is presenting, they focused in on this process logjam that occurred from COVID about several months ago, and the panic that went in about so few and the control, and how the consolidation has been a negative thing to get local butchers to be able to, you know, if you can get a local butcher who's certified by the USDA, they can do certain things. So I don't know the details of it. When I went to the Virginia Biologicals Farmers Conference, they talked extensively about that as a method to kind of break the chains of having to provide, you know, processing houses that only want 100 cattle at once. They would rather be able to do that because it means money for them instead of your 3 cows, you know. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, and there are, you know, different states have different rules. Here in New York, you can get a New York license that's just like a simple food processing license, you know, that you might use if you were making pickles or baked goods. And with that license, you can bring USDA inspected meat into your own facility and then do further processing, even meat cutting, value added processing, dry curing, and all that. So it's a way to, you know, pull some meat away. If you can get your USDA inspected processor to be willing to do a kill only, that's not usually the kill stage is not where they're usually getting backed up. It's in the further processing. So we've seen, you know, folks, like, again, in multiple states respond by getting their own licensing, getting animals killed at USDA inspected facilities, and then bringing the carcasses into their own facilities to do cutting and value add. And that's another solution that takes an investment and some time to get permitted and so on. But yeah, in the long run, that's another good option to alleviate the processing struggle.
Thanks for that idea.
Is it now good for other folks to chime in with questions? I'm sure you all have some.
The first hour flew for me.
So Matt, I have a question because I want to service the ethnic markets. I moved out from California after retiring from the military, and I know there's varied ethnic populations, but some places, and I found that Virginia doesn't have great stats on it on some of the areas. Washington, D.C. does. What's another alternative place to go besides trying to go to the agencies that might not have good stats on the populations in the neighborhoods, or where to go to get the information?
I see.
Or to sell?
Yeah, so places for market research. If you have a university library near you, they purchase marketing databases that you wouldn't be able to access on your own. But when you visit a university library or even their online system, if you sort of the gateway in, then you can access the special databases that they've paid for, and you can just start typing in keywords and find good statistics that way. That's one form. Another form would be to, just do your own knocking around online and investigating, and keyword searches in your region. It's probably, it's a little more vague, but when I'm advising people on how to conduct some market research, I do encourage them to go to a university library because there's special access. I'll just tell you, there's a database called Mintel. Type this in. Yeah, someone just commented looking for churches, temples, mosques, etc. could help you find particular groups. Mintel is a database, and then so is Nielsen. Nielsen, just like the television ratings, Nielsen does tons of consumer research. So you can search these databases if you've paid for them. Please don't pay on your own. go to the library and use their paid version. And then there's sort of a next level down, which is searching for keywords. Even if you're searching for pasture-raised pork or other keyword searches, you'll find articles that have been written that cite those primary sources. So Time Magazine might write an article about the new trend for pasture-raised pork, and they're going to cite the Mintel and the Nielsen, so you can kind of get at it that way for free, but it's not as efficient as going right to the library. So try looking into some of those resources, and yeah, you get the hang of it when you spend a little time online and search around. Another great thing for market research, I always tell folks, it's funny, is your own current customers. So if you're planning a new business, you don't have them, I understand, but you can look at similar operations and their customers, or if you are already up and running, you can talk to your customers. I was advising some food businesses in Rhode Island, and I said this, and one woman said, "You mean we can ask our customers what they're doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. First of all, they probably want to support you, so they want you to ask, and ask them how they're using the product, what they're using it for. You'll learn a lot from your own customer base."
Great, thank you. All right, anyone else? I guess I just added as well that there's some of our extension agents have worked quite extensively in marketing meat to different populations, and so at least in Maryland, that's a pretty good resource for folks if you're looking to raise goat or lamb.
Oh, yeah, and just this question, is chicken considered a loss leader for most local farms? Well, I couldn't really say, but I would say that, yeah, you have to work on your pricing. It's a great segue. You really have to know how to price your chicken, and understand your costs in order to make money on chicken. But I couldn't say, frankly, as a smaller farm, I wouldn't necessarily advocate for having a loss leader. That's fine for the big chain grocery stores, but for us, we want to make the farm, ultimately financially sustainable. But yeah, people who aren't pricing their products right, maybe running them as loss leaders, or eggs. Eggs are pretty tricky as well.
Matt, can you just define that term for us, for anyone who's not familiar with what loss leader means?
Sure. The concept of a loss leader is a product that again, it mostly applies to maybe retailers, but it's a product that you sell at a loss intentionally because it'll bring folks in the door. And the idea is that if they're coming in, milk, unfortunately, milk is a good example of this. Grocery stores will sell, gallons of milk at below their own cost. And then the consumer thinks, well, I'm going to go to that store because they have cheap milk, right? And the idea is that when you come into the store and you walk to the far back corner where the dairy section is, you walk by all the other products, and they're going to lose money on the milk, but you're going to buy, 6 other items that they make plenty of money on. So the loss leader is just to get you in. And yeah, it's very effective. That's why the milk's in the far back corner of almost every grocery store.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, same with chicken. Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that has metrics for that in this region to know definitively if folks consider it a loss leader or not. But I can look and ask some folks and see if I can get some information on that. I can say the farms that I've worked with through my role at Future Harvest have not been treating chicken like a loss leader. It's been something that either makes money for them or they're no longer producing.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. Something I want to help you put your marketing goggles on and think about is the consumer who's looking for the very lowest prices is probably not your target customer. So having loss leader products isn't an effective strategy, right? Because that's not who your customer is the price shopper. They're coming to you for other characteristics and traits. So you don't actually, we're going to talk about pricing next, but you don't have to think about being the lowest price in the market, because that's not really what your customers are seeking.
Well, and we had a question if you'll be discussing the calculator today. So I think we are
Yeah, there we are. We have our segue. Yeah, you want me to just get back into sharing my screen? And
yeah, why don't we do that? And then folks, if
Right.
you have additional questions, we're going to do the same thing as last time. If you can just put them in the chat box, that would be great. No, Keith, I think that's perfect, because we can always take more time at the end to do more Q&A as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can talk pricing, pricing questions at the end as well. Is that working? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right, so yeah, we're going to talk about the second part of profitable meat marketing. And we talked about the technique, and now we're going to talk about the pricing side. And I am going to be speaking largely in terms of livestock, so beef, pork, lamb, goat, but everything I say also applies to poultry, and rabbits and other species. All right, so getting right into the pricing. When we approach the pricing question, I really want to start with the farm's financial goals. So think about how much income do we wish to derive from the farm in a year. It's easy to split up by month, and then if you're a multi-species farm, it's easy enough to start to split up by species. So just giving you this generic idea of an example, we can say, well, we really want the farm to generate $100,000 in sales. Now that's gross income, not profit, right? But we want the farm to generate $100,000 in sales each year. We're going to raise beef and pork, so we're going to say that we wish to make $70,000 in sales from the beef and $30,000 in pork. Then we're going to look at what that would take, what we'd have to gross per animal, knowing our inventory, our numbers, and this gets us a basis for pricing. That's a very simple way to sort of back into what's the correct price for our farm. Now, this is a broad sketch. We're still going to get into details like cost of production and all that, but this is a broad sketch to see if we can reach our financial goals. Of course, we'd all be willing to exceed our financial goals, so don't worry about that. When we think about gross sales, we're also going to think about how much we'll be able to retain as a profit, and really we need to set pricing that delivers a profit. And then, of course, how many head do we need to market? And I just put this as a very general frame. We can't realistically say that we wish to gross $200,000 a year when we're only marketing 8 lambs, right? So it's just framing us up for some reality and begin our price conversation. Next, I want to just introduce the different channels that we have to sell meat in, because this is relevant to the pricing discussion. There are channels that will buy carcasses, and then there are channels that will buy meat by the cut. I'm going to talk a lot this afternoon about channels that take meat by the cut. So those are things like farmers markets, having our own retail store at the farm, or even just freezers that we sell out of at the farm. That's very common. Maybe doing something like a meat CSA, or selling by the cut to restaurants and grocers. There are also channels that buy meat by the carcass. Even conventional, commodity sales, you're getting paid on a carcass weight. Then we have the regional brands, like Strauss is a brand, I believe, that's operating in the Mid-Atlantic. So they're going to be buying your animals and paying you based on a carcass weight. And then you might have restaurants that want to bring in sides or whole animals. And again, in-store butcher shops, maybe at specialty grocery stores, that want to bring in sides and whole animals. So all sorts of mix here between direct-to-consumer and wholesale, and sales by the carcass and sales by the cut. And when we look at a sort of stack up of these different channels, we can see that the channels like farmers market, where we're selling by the cut, and I say with processing, meaning we, the farm, are going to be involved in paying a processor, delivering the animal, and so on. This might bring the highest price per pound that we receive. And to compare all channels, I'll just talk about price per pound hanging weight or carcass weight. But while the farmer's market delivers the highest price per pound, it's also going to take the highest amount of farm marketing, right? So we're going to have to be promoting and advertising our brand in addition to showing up at the market and spending those hours selling, which could be quite lengthy. Do 4 farmers markets a week and you've basically got a full-time job. So what I'm trying to show here is that as channels sort of decline in the price that they'll pay, they also require less of a marketing effort from you and maybe even get you out of dealing with the processor altogether. Like those regional brands and commodity sales, you're going to put animals on a trailer. You don't have to schedule the processor at all. You're going to receive a check. Yes, it's a lower price, but none of these channels is relatively good or bad compared to the other, because we're going to choose channels that suit our preferences, our lifestyle, and the amount of farm marketing effort that we're willing to do. So I'm not saying top paying channels are good and low paying channels are bad. Really, it's just a question of what you enjoy and what you want to spend your time on. And really, the pricing challenge with meat is that each of those channels that we just talked about takes a different level of input. So if nothing else, let's think about your time. Each channel has a different cost in time and farm marketing effort. Each cut of meat comes in a proportion on a carcass, right? We call that the yield. So I know beef the best. The rib section is 9% of the carcass. The chuck section is 25% of the carcass. The round is 26. Right? So we have these different yields. And then each of these cuts that we just talked about, or I was talking about primals, but each cut has a level of demand in each channel. So we could have a certain farmer's market channel where the consumers are really interested in buying lower priced cuts like those from the chuck and the round and ground meat. And we might have another farmer's market where the customers really want ribeyes and T-bones, right, and strip steaks, so higher priced cuts. So not only do you have this confusion of channels taking different amounts of time from us, we also have these proportions that the meat comes in, and then the consumer demand for those. And it just kind of works out against us, I guess, when it comes to certain species like beef, that people really want the stuff that comes in very small yield, and they are less likely to want the stuff that comes in a large yield. Great, right? I don't know if you've ever talked to a customer, a first-time bulk buyer, who says, "I'll buy a quarter of a beef. Please have it all cut into ribeye steaks," right? Or cut my whole pig into bacon. This doesn't work that way. But I'm sure you've heard it. All right, because of these conditions in this pricing challenge, my theory is that we need unique pricing for each channel that we sell in. And remember, we were talking about those different levels of cost and the different prices received. In fact, why expect different levels of profit from different marketing channels? I often hear folks talk about, oh, I sell at the farmer's market. Maybe they'll say that's really profitable, but I sell to this grocery store and that's not as profitable. Well, why should we think about these different channels delivering different levels of profit to the farm? I think the real variable is the amount of effort or the time that we have to spend. So I'd like to create a scenario where the profit per head that the farm receives is fixed because we've identified a certain income level that we're trying to reach. And the variable is the cost of marketing. So I'm going to use made up numbers on this diagram just to illustrate a point. I've got 3 different market channels here. There's the farmer's market, where I sell meat by the cut. There's a restaurant where I sell meat by the cut. And then what I call the freezer trade, bulk sales, where I sell quarters directly to consumers, right? So my cost of production of a beef animal in all 3 market channels is the same, right? So that's fixed at $1,000 per head. Then in all of these scenarios, I'm going to pay a processor to do kill, cut, and wrap. Let's just say I use the same processor for all channels, so my processing costs are fixed regardless of the market channel. The next thing I want to plug in is my farm identified profit per head. And I'm going to say, in addition to my cost, I'd like to receive $300 per head in profit. So that's fixed across all channels. So the only variable left to influence pricing is the marketing labor. And in this, I'm going to say farmers market sales take me a lot of my time. So I'm going to put the largest price tag on that. I don't remember, I think it comes up in a later slide where I derived the $960, but think of that as an hourly rate for my time selling in that channel. And then I determined, well, restaurant, my restaurant customers, they make larger orders, they take a good selection of cuts. So it takes me less time to sell to the restaurant. To sell all the meat from one animal will take me half the time that it does at the farmer's market. So I put my marketing cost in at 480, and then half again for freezer trade. I've only got 4 customers. They're buying a quarter of the animal. And, if a few of them are returning customers, it takes very little time on my part. So I end up with different gross sales per head, right? And that's going to be reflected in my pricing, different pricing for each channel, but my profit per head is fixed. And that's how I'd like us to start thinking about our channels and entering the pricing discussion. The other thing to think about when we get into the pricing discussion is that really our farm is multiple businesses and each business must profit. At the simplest level, I'd like to break the farm down. And if you're doing direct-to-consumer sales or if you're doing meat sales, at least break the farm into 2 businesses. One is the production business. Its product is slaughter-ready animals. And the next business is marketing and sales. It purchases slaughter-ready animals from my production side and then does the processing and the selling. You can break those into even smaller steps where you might have a breeding herd, right? A cow-calf or a sow operation. And it really sells feeders to our feeding and finishing business. And of course, I don't mean to have these legally set up as different entities or even to get complicated or write yourself a check when you move a feeder off of the breeding herd. You wean it and you move it into the feed yard. But really sort of a mental accounting and an idea that at each step in this business, there are opportunities to do something different. So we could sell feeders into the market. And when we choose, therefore, to retain a feeder, we should have a certain price in mind. In essence, I think if we're going to retain a feeder and add cost to it by keeping it and feeding it, we should be able to sort of justify that decision by giving ourselves a better than market price. The alternative too is that we could buy feeders in. It may be the case that you can buy feeders in for less than you can produce them, and you can still have a feeding and finishing operation and you can still sell meat, right? But it's just this idea of looking at costs. So the one I really want to focus on is, yeah, you can sell and you can buy finished animals. Is the price that your marketing and sales business will pay to your production business for a finished slaughter-ready animal. And that price at break even would be your cost of production, right? And that's the other thing I want to say on this graphic is I have that long arrow at the bottom. It says adding costs and increasing risk. So yes, when we choose to retain an animal from birth to slaughter through its life cycle, we're going to be adding costs to that animal in the form of care and feed. And therefore, we're increasing our loss, our risk of a loss if the animal was to die. So, a lamb that dies when it's 2 days old is a financial loss for the farm. But a freezer with all the meat from a full-grown lamb, going down and having the meat spoil is a greater loss. And that's what I mean. Of course, I didn't put it here in my graphic, but we're also adding value to that animal when we retain it. And that's the reward and that's the payoff. But think too that we're adding costs and we're increasing our risk of loss. So I'm going to introduce the Cornell meat price and yield calculator. I developed the tool while I worked for Cornell. It's online, it's free to use, and I'll give you the web address in a few minutes here. But just before we go to a live demonstration online, I just want to talk about some of the numbers that I'm going to be typing in order to save time. So I'm going to do a beef example, and the first question it's going to ask me is, what is your break-even cost of production? That's going to be the $1,300 per head. for this beef animal. That's my own number. I'm not telling you to use that number, but it's designed for sort of a small scale operation in New York State. And then I don't want my production farm to be totally break even. Excuse me. So I've added a small profit of $100 a head. So that means my marketing business is buying slaughter ready beef at $1,400 a head. Then it's going to ask about processing and marketing. So it's going to ask how much profit would you like on one head and how much time we invest selling. So if you were to fill this in, you'd have to do some estimates, or I'd love it if you kept a notebook just for 1 week and you kept track of your labor. So I'm going to estimate to sell all the meat from one animal would take me 40 hours at farmers markets. It might take me half of that time at restaurants, and even less when I'm selling quarters and halves to consumers. So when I do that farmers market example, what I'm thinking is I'm going to spend, it's going to take me 5 farmers markets at 8 hours each and pay myself, not really, but value my time at 15 an hour. If I sell 80 pounds of meat per market, I'll sell all the meat from that one animal, and it will cost me $600. In addition to covering my time, my cost for participating in the farmer's market, I want a really big reward. And that's we've been increasing risk and adding cost. Where's the payoff? Where's the reward? Well, it's this $500 a head. That's why I'm going through the trouble of direct marketing, selling meat by the cut. It's complicated. I have to run these freezers. I have to worry about broken cryovac seals. So what's the payoff? It's the $500 a head, and I've made that number up for myself. So in essence, we've taken another $1,100 and added it to our costs. All right, so now I'm going to go to the calculator. That's the website. It's calculator.meatsuite.com. And I'm going to leave PowerPoint and go online. Does that look good? Is that showing up?
It is, yeah. And the link is in the chat box if anybody wants to copy it for later use for yourself as well.
And I'm going to use a fresh tab because I noticed it times out after a while. So here's the price calculator. I will say that we're really fortunate. We just got a grant with Cornell to build a new and better version of this, and I'll be going there in 2021 and working on that. So stay tuned for a better version. It's going to give you some description like I was just giving you, and then you're going to get into it. So assuming that you can see the section that we're filling in, I'm just going to click through and show you how I use the tool. And we're going to progress along these gray buttons at the bottom, and when we get to the end, we'll have our final price. So the first question is, for which marketing channel are you setting a price? I'm going to say farmer's market. Because we're doing the farmer's market, we're pricing cuts, not by the carcass weight or hanging weight. And we're going to do a beef example. That's it for that page. We can go to the next. And right here, it reminds you about what you're working on. So if you are multi-species or multi-channel, it's going to keep you tuned into what you're working on. As I promised, it's going to ask, what's your cost of production for this animal? Typical animal from your farm. I'm going to say the cost of production is $1,300 per head for break even. And then in addition, I want to add a profit. I'm going to say profit per head. And I said it would be $100. Okay, now you're going to have to drive your animal to the processor and then make another trip to the processor to pick up the meat and either deliver it to customers or bring it back to the farm. So I'm going to say it costs me $35 per head to truck my animals there and $35 to go and pick up the meat again. There is a little helper that will help you with that. You can put in how many head, how much you spend on fuel, and how much time, and it will calculate your trucking cost. But I'm going to go with my example for today and say it was $35 per head in each direction. What we did is tried to track costs that it's realistic for you to record. So, you'll set out before you use the calculator and begin collecting your data. The next load of animals that you take, track things like time and gas and number of head. And then it's going to ask for a carcass weight. So the idea is that you would choose one typical animal from your farm and bring it to the processor and track that animal. you're going to have to get all the meat just from that animal back and then weigh it out so you know the weights of all the different cuts. If you keep lots of records, you do a batch of 6 and you have all the data, you could take an average from that group of 6 and treat it as one animal. Or alternatively, if you're not a diligent record keeper, if you're like me, then you choose one representative animal, not the best animal you ever had, just something that's sort of average, and just track that one, all right? And then trust that snapshot to be a representation from the farm. So in my representative animal, the carcass weight is 605 pounds. I paid the processor the kill fee or the slaughter fee of $85 per head. And then the cut and wrap, this is per pound carcass. So make sure you enter the decimal point there. It's going to be 85 cents in my example. If I didn't have the decimal point, the numbers would really get out of hand. And then we do have room for you to accommodate additional processing. So if you had smoking done, you could put in smoking and then how many pounds were smoked, or if you had patties formed, put in, the processor. It's going to be right on your invoice from the processor. You charge an additional 35 cents a pound for patties. And then on a later screen, you'll say how many pounds were processed that way. But actually, for my example, I'm just going to say no additional processing and keep going. And now you're going to enter all your cuts. So it's going to take me just a moment to enter these and the pounds. And so I really mean, follow that, bring that animal, and bring it home and weigh out all these cuts on the kitchen counter. Some processors do have systems in place and can give you a printout or email it to you. It's really nice as the technology in these small plants develops. Some folks can furnish it for you, but if you're not using one of those, then you're just going to bring it home. When you use the calculator, you're just going to type in the name of any cut. You can call it Caroline's special steak. It doesn't matter. We don't stick to any convention on here. To save time, my browser remembers what I typed last time, so I can click through these cuts a little bit faster than making you all wait while I type. There's going to be a little bit of that too.
Well, now's a good time for, if folks have questions, to think about them or add them in the chat box so we can address them as we move forward too.
Sure, because I'm going to have to type in all these pounds, so that's a good idea.
Or if y'all have your notes near you and you want to pull up the calculator for yourself and run through it side by side and see how your numbers actually work out if you've got a rough idea, this would be a good chance to do that as well.
And, if you don't have your numbers, you don't have all your numbers ready, I recommend, you just keep track when you bring your next batch of animals. And this tool's been online for several years. And I have to say, when folks head in here and try to make the numbers up off the cuff, they quit. They quit halfway through. So it might be a while, but wait and get all your data together before you sit down. I'm working off, I give myself a script. I collected all that data in advance so that I can just sit down in front of the tool and have everything here and do a consistent, repetitions if I want to try different strategies and so on. So here I've entered all my cuts and how many pounds I received. I can go to the next page. And it gives a little summary. My total retail yield of sellable pounds of meat from that carcass is 389.5 pounds. That means the yield from carcass to retail is 64%. Skipping down below, so far between my cost of production, production profit, and trucking and processing, I spent $2,070 on this animal. But now we're going to get into the marketing. So what this dialogue here is asking is how much time will you spend selling all the meat from this one animal, and how much profit would you like? So I was showing you, you can do it as a percentage, and it will use a percent of that $2,070 here. But I am a fan of using the per head version. So in my slides, I showed you an estimate of $600 for my labor spent at those 5 farmers markets. And then my reward for taking on this risk and this labor, is an additional $500 per head profit.
And we have a quick clarifying question. You don't need to
Sure.
go back. Would you separate out the same travel cost for each species if you were to travel to a farmer's market in one vehicle, or separate by weight of product?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great question. If you're bringing pork and beef to the farmer's market, then you would adjust your hours of commitment, your hours spent marketing of beef downwards, right? Because you're selling multiple species. You'd have to look at some proportion. If 2/3 of your sales are beef and 1/3 is pork, and you look at those 8 hours spent at market and cut them down to 2/3 when you're doing the beef calculation. That's my simplest approach to answering that question. And the same would go for trucking. For time spent driving, you could reduce it proportionally. I hope that was a helpful answer. It's a common question. All right,
Yeah.
so now, yeah, good. I'm going to enter my current pricing. So if you're already doing this farmer's market and you want to test if your pricing is covering costs and delivering the desired profit, you'd put your current pricing in. If you're developing a price for the very first time, then what we ask is that you just enter $1 a pound for all products. Of course, the calculator on the next page will tell you that your prices are too low, but you do that because you're just starting. The $1 a pound is a good way to indicate to me, who sees the data, that you're creating a price for the first time. So I'm going to enter my current pricing, and this is phony pricing, so don't get excited about any of these prices that, Matt, you're doing it all wrong. I'm just giving you an example of how to work on pricing. Although I was prompted to work on pricing in part because I surveyed local farmers market prices up here in central New York and found that they were really very low. And realistically, I didn't think that those prices could deliver a profit to farms. So started working on how can we assist farms with pricing. This is the result. Okay, so I've put in my current pricing, and I can go, let me double check. Yeah. Go to the next page and get another summary. Your current weighted average price. So the weighted average price across all pounds that you have that you're selling with current pricing is $6.75 a pound. Your total income when you sell all this meat with your current prices will be $2,630. But based on your costs, your yields, and your goals, you're falling short of your goal by $538 per head. So now you can go to the next page to revise your price. So what we did here, I think it's kind of clever and maybe a little bit of a game. You have a red light when you have this current set of prices, and your goal is to turn the light green as you adjust pricing. So we're going to look at our cuts. We're showing you how many pounds you have and what your current price is, and then we give you a spot to do a revision of your pricing. So sirloin steaks I had at $9.50. I'm going to raise my sirloin up to $11. And brisket, well, everybody loves to smoke brisket, so I'm going to raise that to $8. And short ribs, really popular in the winter, I'm going to come up to $6.50. And you can see how short of my goal that's changing as I enter prices. Let's see what else can I change. Filet at $15 is just too low, so I'm going to go all the way up to $25. $10 a pound increase. But if you look, I only have 6.5 pounds of filet, so it doesn't have a huge impact on the bottom line, if you will. That's why we put the poundage there, because price changes on the products that you have the most of will have the biggest impact. Okay, and I'm going to change my ribeye up to 19. All right, so we've made all these great price increases, but we're still short of our goal because we have 188 pounds of ground beef at $5 a pound. So this is really where a price change will be most effective. And if I increase that to $6.50 a pound, then I'll have a green light. And so what I would say is this: the real magic in my mind of the pricing tool is not just coming on and getting a green light, but now it's on this page thinking about what are the cuts that sell very quickly? What are the first things that I'll sell out of when I bring a new batch of animals back from the processor? Whatever those cuts are for this channel, I want to look at this pricing and see if there's room still to increase those prices. If I'm always selling out of ribeyes and sirloins and strips, I'd actually consider increasing those prices even more. And then think about those cuts that move very slowly, that I tend to stockpile, that I have an extra freezer in the barn full of, right? Maybe that's my rump roast or my chuck roast. Is there an opportunity now that I've increased the other prices to maybe lower those prices a little bit? If I'm going to maintain a green light here, then I know I'm reaching my profit goals, but I might be able to now manage inventory or manage consumer demand for cuts by using pricing as a tool, right? So slow down cuts that are quick to sell out, speed up slow moving cuts with pricing as your tool. Another thing about pricing of individual cuts and sort of using it as an inventory management trick is to think about, when a consumer approaches you and they want to make a purchase and maybe they had ribeye steaks in mind, right? And they come and they see their $19 a pound. It's not their response to just walk away necessarily. It's more like an opportunity for you to maybe move them down carcass, right? Well, yeah, I understand ribeye prices are high, but look, we've got sirloin steaks. They're great on the grill, right? And they're $11 a pound. So it's an inventory management tool where you can still sell something to the consumer, but maybe moving them down kind of where you need them to be into some of these other cuts. So I've changed all my prices. I've got a green light, and go to the next page and get one more summary. It says our weighted average price across all pounds. Before it was $6.75 a pound. We moved it up to $8.16. That's what it took to realize our goals. So now our total gross sales when all of this meat is sold with the new pricing will be $3,176. And yeah, we've exceeded our goal by a few dollars. That's no concern. So the tool will then ask you a few questions, and it will give you a nice printout if you answer those questions and turn over your email address. And let me show you what you get. Okay, you get this. You can get your price list. So it's going to look like this. It's going to tell you which channel you were pricing for, the final prices that you ended up with, and the date that you did that on. So you can use this, you can print this out or save it and use it as a reference. I guess my vision was it's almost nice enough to hang up in the barn. If you let people come in and buy meat out of the barn, and that's how I buy my pork, you just tack up the new price list and let them come and see that. Let me go back. PowerPoint. I just have a few more slides to share.
Great. And we have a couple questions.
Sure.
I can ask them now or at the end.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. One was just about common pricing traps that you've seen farmers do to themselves or heard about. So I guess common pitfalls.
Common pitfalls. I can't think of maybe a pricing pitfall, but certainly with inventory. So I like to tease folks and say, if there's a certain cut that just never sells, why are you still bringing it back from the processor, right? Stop. If chuck roast is maybe something I shouldn't pick on, but if chuck roast never ever sells, change up your cut list and don't get chuck roasts anymore. Have it turned into ground or turned into something else. So yeah, keep your cut sheet lively and responsive to what's going on with consumers. Don't get stuck in just one cut sheet. I think another, I guess a possible price trap would be to turn high value cuts into low value cuts. So I don't think I've really seen people doing this, but taking something that you could normally sell for $7, $8 a pound and turning it into $5 a pound ground beef would be a mistake. Again, I don't really see that. I think, and I'm going to address it in the next few slides. I think that the biggest mistake is not having the confidence and the marketing stamina to demand the prices that are necessary for the farm. So, I think people are often afraid of high prices. They see that they need, $8 or $9 a pound for ground, and they're afraid to try to ask customers for that. And I think I'll address that in the next few slides. Was there another question right now?
It was sort of a follow-up, and it was more about if farmers have made like the reasoning behind maybe why farmers make some decisions that aren't necessarily strategic for their businesses. But it sounds like you might be about to get into some of that as well.
Sure. And I think, it's called autopilot, and we all do it. My farmer friends will approach me and just bounce ideas off me and, hey, I have this marketing idea. Do you think this is a good idea? And I'll say, well, I don't know. What's your objective? I think that sometimes we just maybe shoot from the hip. We don't have data, or opportunities come at us and we react without coming back to, well, what am I trying to accomplish with the farm? What are my income goals? Who are my target customers? So I guess I would just say, getting strategic is the solution to common marketing pitfalls.
That makes sense. Well, and here's a really interesting comment. Sorry, it's just one farmer, Mike, that he has a summer cut list that has lots of like grillable cuts, and a winter cut sheet, not cut list, cut sheet that has more roasts.
Oh yeah, very smart, responsive, right? Understanding that people cook differently in the different seasons. So that's a great idea. I hope other people can adopt that. Even, like I said very early on, if you're in a urban area, you might have some farmers markets in, certain neighborhoods where people have cash and they're looking for grillables and higher end cuts. And then you have another, maybe more rural or more working class market where you're going to sell more chuck roasts and ground, and, kind of dividing up the cuts that you bring to market. I always tell people, just because you produce it doesn't mean you have to offer it every place that you sell, right? So you don't have to lug every single cut to every market. You begin to sort of flesh out what sells where, just bring that, just only offer it in the space, or the seasonal cut list idea is a terrific idea. All right, so when we're using the pricing tool and we're working on pricing, what's the point? The point of working on pricing is to ensure that when we do sell animals in these various channels, that we're actually receiving a profit to the farm. Again, people tend to price by looking at grocery store prices or looking at competitors' prices and not really knowing what's in it for their business. So starting with numbers from the farm and building out is a more accurate way to ensure profit. It's a way to test the current market channels that you're using and make adjustments in order to receive that profit and to pay for your time. Account for your time and your other marketing costs, including advertising costs and even just channel costs like farmers market fees or packaging and so on. It's a way to help manage the inventory of cuts, that something that particularly beginning farms might struggle with, moving all these different cuts with their different proportions and levels of demand, moving them in essence at a rate that's proportionate to their yield in order to not get backlogged or to sell out quickly. It's a way to evaluate the price for a new opportunity. If a restaurant in your town says we'd really like to get local meat on the menu, you would put your best estimates in and work up pricing for that channel. You might also create order minimums, right? Order size minimums to make them purchase a good quantity. It's a way to aid wholesale buyers. So in fact, in that restaurant example, what I propose is that you could come up with the pounds and the yield. Let's say the restaurant wanted to buy whole lambs. You could supply them with the data and let them see how the price that they pay you, which is it's their cost of production, if you will, on the tool, how they'll be able to price out the different cuts on their menu if they were to buy the whole lamb and break it down in-house and start selling it to the customer. So I have an anecdote of a pork farmer up here who wanted to get into Whole Foods, and he actually used the pricing tool with the buyer from Whole Foods. so that the buyer could more completely understand the implications of all the cuts of meat they would get from a pig, what price they'd pay the farm, and how it would sort of come out on the individual cuts. So he credits using that pricing tool back and forth with the buyer from Whole Foods to getting him in the store. And then really ultimately to develop channel-specific pricing that works. It's okay to have different prices at different farmers markets. And there's a great couple in Pennsylvania that they do 2 different farmers markets, and one's in their hometown where their farm is, and one's 2 hours away in a big city. I won't say who, so I don't give them away, right? And they said, well, what if the people in the city found out about the prices that we use at the local farmers market? If we had 2 different price lists and they found out, what would we do? And I said, well, that's easy. You would tell them, hey, you can get those prices too. Just drive 2 hours, right? People will immediately understand why you have different prices for different markets. If your costs are really different, in this case, you're driving an extra 4 hours per market, you have higher costs, you create a different price sheet. If the consumers find out it's cheaper at the farm, they're welcome to drive 2 hours one way and get that. So yeah, you don't have to really worry about having different sets of prices for different channels. All right, so what does it mean if you develop pricing using this tool and then you determine that the customers in that channel would never pay those prices, right? And I've heard this, oh, well, I could never get those prices. There's a lot of implications here. It means that you're in the wrong channel, or it means that you're not really supporting your pricing with effective marketing. Think about push and pull. If those customers would never pay you those prices, you're in a push situation, right? Trying to convince them that your meat is worth this. So you're in the wrong channel and you're selling to the wrong customer. You're going to have to apply more marketing management in order to get those prices. It is possible, and there's so many great anecdotes and examples out there, but that's what it means if you determine, oh, these prices are too high and my customers would never pay them. Let me give you an example that I think you can relate to. For 6 years, I did a study at a sale barn here in New York where we looked at every pen of feeder calves that was marketed and recorded 13 different characteristics about that pen. So body condition score, color of the hide, which implies breed, all these other details, the number of head, their weight, and so on. What we found statistically is that the factors that influence feeder calf prices are things that you probably guessed: having good genetics, having a good strong body condition score, having steers that are castrated, having calves that are actually weaned, not weaned on the highway on the way to the sale barn, but actually weaned, animals that are started on feed and that are vaccinated, same deal, not vaccinated yesterday, but vaccinated and boosted properly, right? When you have calves or other, we did feeder beef, but when you have calves that have these conditions, the buyers will pay much higher prices. So I'm calling that the difference between $1 a pound and $2 a pound calves. You could call these characteristics applied production management, right? Managers who choose good bulls, who feed animals, who castrate steers, who wean and vaccinate, and so on. Buyers will pay more. The same idea applies to selling ground beef at the farmer's market. The difference between $4 a pound and $8 a pound ground beef at farmer's market is understanding your target market, being at the right farmer's market, having a marketing strategy, being in a pull market situation from your market research, having a marketing budget, supporting your marketing efforts with good consumer communication, and putting in time spent on your marketing. So I'm going to call this applied marketing management. So this idea that, that my restaurant customer, if I were to revise my prices, my restaurant customer would never pay them. Well, that's the wrong restaurant, right? There are restaurants out there who value locally raised meats, and you need to seek them out. It's a different target customer maybe than the one who says, oh, these prices are much too high and I would never buy that product. Furthermore, you need to support pricing with a good marketing effort. When you're going to use the the price calculator, you need to identify income and profit goals, understand something about your production cost, a good, strong estimate of cost of production. I don't have a cost of production calculator, but extension associates, in your county can help you calculate cost of production for your farm. It's the first number that you put in. It's really vital that you have an accurate reflection of your cost of production, because if you underestimate that by $500 a head, all your pricing ultimately will be off, and you won't really realize the kind of profits that you were planning for. And then you develop a price for each channel. For successful use with the tool, it's been live for a number of years, and I've seen a lot of people sort of get so many pages in and then quit. The best way is to prepare in advance. If you have a batch of animals that are going this fall, you may not be using the pricing tool until you receive all that meat back and you get to weigh it out. Set aside some time, calculate your cost of production with help from someone else if you need it. Decide on your desired profit per head for the production side of your business and for your marketing business. Keep a log or estimate your marketing time for each channel that you sell in. Decide on that marketing profit per head, and then have all the data, the weights of each cut or the average from a group, have it all written down and collected in one spot, so that when you sit down in front of the computer, everything's on paper. You're not getting up and going and looking for it. That might involve weighing all the cuts, or maybe your processor can give you a printout and have your processing invoice in front of you, so you know carcass weights and slaughter fee and cut and wrap fee, and knowing your trucking time. And then if you're comparing or testing your current pricing, having a list of your current prices available. Last things I'll say is that I wrote 4 very short articles, or 1 to 2 pages each. You can find them. You don't even worry about that web address. If you type in Cornell Smart Marketing, those 3 words, you'll find this website. And then the articles were published there in the fall of 2017 and January of 2018. It's 4-part series about strategy and objectives, understanding consumers and pricing. So they're a light read, but they kind of cover a lot of the material that we just covered today. And finally, I'll offer my email address. You feel free to contact me by email. And if you have questions, or questions occur to you, later on as you ruminate about all this stuff, or you have your marketing meeting with your family at the kitchen table and you have questions, feel free to email me. Now we can take questions.
Thank you so much, Matt. Just quickly before we jump into questions, because we are getting close to 5, I'm going to put the link to the survey, the post-event survey, in the chat box here. So if y'all don't mind taking a few minutes just to fill that out, it's just a couple questions. They're all multiple choice. You just click through. It really helps us inform programmatic decisions for the future. So thank you. All right, and Mike made a comment that one good place to start for cost of production is the local sale barn, and that if they're good animals there that you would be proud to have, their sale price is a minimum cost of production.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. No, I'll chime in about that. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about your suggestion. On the meat tool, on the price calculator, I had a link to market prices, and my logic was the same as yours. I thought if people just don't know anything about the cost of production on their farm, they could go and look at current market prices and assume that market prices are break even. In other words, whatever is being paid in the major markets is your cost of production. So yeah, I share that idea, Mike, and I don't dislike it immediately. But the other, the danger is if you're a very small operation or you're really cost intensive, it could still be misleading. But yeah, I do agree. And like I say, there are links to USDA market reports on the pricing tool that will show you beef, pork, and lamb prices that you can use as a basis. Just like he said, assume that the sale price is at minimum your cost of production. Thanks for chiming in with that.
And I meant to invite everybody to turn on their video so we can have a little bit more of an open Q&A discussion. Feel free to unmute yourself and join in.
It's more fun that way, right?
Yeah, it is. Hey, Mike.
How you doing?
Yeah, any other questions from folks or thoughts? We can just have the rest of this be, an open forum. We have another question. Hang on a second. There's a lot of commodity cow-calf operations that have highly streamlined feed operations and sales. In Winchester, Virginia, are those farms getting commodity beef pricing? It sounds like it from what you're describing. Matt, does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah, I don't know if he is implying that they sell direct to consumer or what there, but yeah, that's the thing. I had that sort of graphic earlier. There's different prices that come with different channels. Commodity pricing
Hey, Matt.
for efficient
Yeah,
operations.
Matt, I have a lot of cow calves up here, operations in the Northern Virginia area, west of the Blue Ridge, and a lot of these guys are just strictly selling beef for like the mass market, because they got a couple of big processing houses down by Harrisonburg and south. And when I ask someone here what their cost is, they're getting their cattle at like even cheaper than it was out in California. So I mean, I understand what Mike's saying on the cost of production, but my next door neighbor's cost of production is so much lower than my grass feeding operation, because he's getting grains from a co-op that he works in for commodity beef. So I'm just throwing that out there as kind of like a cautionary thing about knowing your atmospherics around your farm neighborhood and what they're primarily doing versus if I was in Loudoun County, Virginia, there's an awful lot of organic, a lot of grass-fed, a lot of sustainable, biodynamic type farms that might be a little bit more reflective of cost of production if they had a local cell house out there, but they don't. So I just brought that up as a thought.
No, Richard, I agree with you. I think that's why I set those sale barn prices as the absolute minimum. You're not going to ever beat those prices. But if you start there and start to work through that, that's a place to start. Particularly, I mean, I'm a grass-fed operator, and I use it as a place to look. I use it as a decision trying to figure out, would I be better? I'm currently a feeder stocker, grass-fed feeder. So I buy stocker calves and then grass feed from there on out. And I use that price as my cost of production. If I tried to go to a cow-calf operation, I think I'd be losing money, frankly, compared to being able to buy at an auction barn and convert, as long as I can get good genetics and be careful about what I buy. I mean, the point that Matt made earlier about, good weaning practices, animals that have been processed well. And typically I don't actually go to the sale barn. I actually work with other producers. We use the sale barn numbers as our reference points to negotiate a price. And for instance, I just use, the sale barn price plus 5%, and they save on the commission and trucking, as an example.
Yeah, and the pricing structure for regional brands that buy finished beef is to look at the commodity reported price and then have what we call a cost plus or price plus system. So they'll look at those reports and then they'll add whatever it is, 25 cents a pound, 50 cents a pound, whatever their system is. But I used to work for a regional brand that used that as a basis and then added. So the same logic applies to cost of production for your farm.
Thanks for clarifying that, Mike and Matt. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's super helpful. Yeah, any other questions for those of you who might need to jump off because we now are after 5? I did put the link to the survey in the chat box again. And I just wanted to say a huge thanks to Matt for pulling together this session and pivoting to have it online, like so many things in the midst of COVID. Being flexible with that, it's very appreciated.
I have a question, and maybe more of the production side, but thank you, Matt and Caroline. I really appreciate this. It's more perhaps on selling, and I guess it's what your cost is, but should you wait until you have a 1,200 pound cow or can you sell at 900? I guess I'm just wondering what you have found in general as to be it's a better approach for.
Well, I mean, if your animal's going to be finished and sort of optimized at a certain weight, so that's got to do with frame size and genetics, right? So you really want to look at the best weight. But if it came to choosing genetics and choosing frame sizes, you might choose that based on your market. So some markets do want smaller carcasses, some want larger carcasses. You know, there's the kill fee or the slaughter fee is fixed regardless of the carcass weight. So in some respects, you want to think about if you're paying processors the same slaughter fee to handle X pounds versus 20% more or whatever. I don't think there's maybe a definitely right answer, but the 1,100 pound animal versus the 900 pound animal is going to come out better per pound for you on your cost side. But you wouldn't want to take a 900 pound animal if it wasn't finished, physiologically mature, marbling, getting fat cover on the carcass and all that, because then you take losses on water loss and stuff while it hung in the cooler. Anybody else have something to say about that?
I would say that your selection of your breed and your genetics should probably, that's going to give you your optimum weight for slaughter fee size. But you also, in addition to your market considerations, probably also, well, maybe it's a subset of market, and that is what's the type of production system you're doing. Sure. I've already committed to grass-fed, and I will tell you that a smaller frame size at maturity works better for me to get the extra 200 pounds from 1,000 to 1,200 on grass. It means almost another winter for me in Northern Virginia, and I get a better return. Or I think I get a better return. I'm going to run a lot more numbers now that I have the calculator, but I think I get a better return on a slightly smaller frame size, even though you're right, my processing fees, I have a kill fee, which is flat, and then the rest of my processing fees, actually I have a kill fee, I have a hide disposal fee, and I think there's one other flat fee in the processing thing, but most of the money is a price per pound of processing. So okay. That washes a little bit.
Yes, thanks for chiming in with that. Yeah, absolutely.
I got one question for you, Matt, that has nothing to do with this, and that is, where in the hell are you sitting?
You're not the first one to ask. I have okay. I work full time in agriculture, but my fun sideline is selling car parts. So it looks like I'm
Okay.
sitting in a Napa store. I'm sitting in my inventory where I work all day at my desk.
Thank you.
If you need any parts for antique Volvos, you just give me a call.
That's good to know. All right.
Kind of a hobby that's like outgrown itself and taken over the garage. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Have to jump off, but thank you very much. It was a great session. And I think Keith or someone suggested, Caroline, that we get Matt down for a future harvest workshop at some point in the future. I think that's a great idea.
I think that would be wonderful to be able to do. I'll pass that along to Gail about the conference, and also talk to Michael Heller about the Grazers Conference.
Okay, great.
Well.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. Everybody stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Happy farming. All
Feel
right.
better.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.